So we've done quite a lot of work in InDesign to get a fixed layout ebook in a double spread form, and this is successful, so we're happy with that. But now we want to add a few bells and whistles to this, and I'm going to look at some animation and sequences of images, and also a little bit of multimedia. So first of all, here we are on the opening page. So this is what's going to be seen first of all when the users open the ebook. And I just want to make the opening of this page a little bit more compelling. So what I'm going to do is to add some very simple animation. So we're just going to select this object. This is our title, Greek Island Recipes, with the author name. And now under the animation panel, which you'll find in the interactive subset of the menus, I'm just going to choose a simple preset, which is now going to fade this in. So I'm just going to fade it in. I've got various options, but the most important option here excuse me, is to make sure that this happens on a page load. So when the page opens, we're going to get that to fade in. I've also got options to change the length or the duration. So I'm going to make this happen over a 2-second. And that's basically all that we need to happen. Now, whenever you create something like this, rather than actually export this to the EPUB, what you can do, in order to see it, what you can do is to use this so-called preview spread, which you'll find on the bottom left of the animation panel. And there we see this actually working. I can run that again by clicking the play preview. Okay, so that's one very simple thing that we've now done. Okay, so now let's have a look at the second spread and see what we might do for this one. Okay, so I'm going to select this image here and go back to my animation panel, and this time I'm going to choose a different kind of preset. I'm going to choose fly in from the bottom. Okay, now when we do this, you can maybe just make out a green line here. This is actually the path that this object is going to take. And basically, we're not going to make any changes here again, but on page load, this will happen. I've just set the duration to be slightly longer, but it's basically going to come in from a point outside of the page and then gradually appear from the bottom. So let's actually again use our preview spread panel to see what this looks like. Okay, so as you can see, this will drift in from the bottom. Okay, that's a couple of things then that we've done for that, just to show you how that works. Let's just make sure that we've saved that particular one. This is our introductory page. So let's have a look at something that we might do here. Now this time we're going to use some multimedia. So I'm going to just show you, do something with a little bit of multimedia. So what my intention is to turn this object here into a button that will play some bells when we click on the image. So what we need to do now is to bring in some audio. So placing objects, I should say multimedia tool is exactly the same as placing images. We simply need to look for our components. So I've got some bells here in MP3 form, and I'm just going to place this down to the right. Now you can see that this is simply a block which contains the multimedia, and if I now look at my media section, you can see that I've got this object in here. I can actually play it. So this explains to you what we've got. Now we don't want this to appear when we load the page this time. We want this to appear or to play when we click over the picture. So I'm going to move this object now onto the page because it needs to be on the page. And I'm now going to do something else, which is to make this graphic into a button. So we need to bring up our buttons and forms panel and turn this into a button. We can give it a name. Let's call it church, for example. And now what we want to happen is an action on release or tap if it's on a portable device like an iPad. So I'm going to click the plus and I'm going to choose out of the many options we've got here to go to the sound. And now it's found that I have an MP3 called Bells on the page, so it knows that's what I want. So I'm simply going to make that play. And again, we can now go to our preview panel. And as you can hear, that is now playing. However, you will see that we do have the very minimal controller on the page. Now, you have to understand that we can, with longer audio, this is just a very short piece of sound bite, if you like, so I'm not too concerned about a controller. I don't need this controller, but I do need to have that audio on the page. So what I'm going to do is to put that audio behind the graphic. So I'm going to my object, arrange, and I'm sending it to the back. So now what we'll find is if we have a look at this, we've got the image. When we click it, there's no sign of the controller, and that will simply stop after a few moments. We could probably make it a little bit shorter because it is a bit long. Okay, the alternative is that we actually create another button which we add onto this object, which will then stop the audio. And I'm not going to do that right now because we need to devote a little bit more time to multimedia later on. But that will do for that particular page. Now let's move now to another recipe. This time I'm going to look at potato balls from the island of Lesbos. Let's just move our panel over on this side. Now for this particular one, I want to, instead of have two images here, I want to make a sequence of images. And you'll see how this works. I'm going to first of all delete both of these images, and you'll see why in a moment, because I've got ready set up. I've got a sequence of images of potato balls, and I'm just going to take one of these images because I've made them all virtually the same size. I'm just going to take one of these and place this on the screen, and now this is where I want this to happen. So I want this to happen around about this place here. And this image here represents my size of all of the images then that I want to put in the sequence. So what I'm going to do is to create an object, an empty object, which is exactly the same shape and size as this. And then I'm going to simply move this to one side and delete this image. Now this object here, I've got certain settings that I want to configure for this object. So I'm moving to my my frame fitting options. I want this to auto fit whatever goes into it. So I'm going to make sure that the content fits that frame. So when I put images into here, it's going to fit that. There's nothing else that I need to do here. But what I now need is I need 3 more copies of this object. So here is where we make this happen. So under Edit, I'm going to step and repeat, and I'm going to make 3 more of this, and I'm going to make this have an offset. Let's just increase this slightly. A vertical offset of 20 pixels, horizontally 12 pixels will be fine, and now I hit OK. And you'll see that I've now got 4 altogether of these objects, and I'm simply going to place then into that these 4 images. So I select them all, place, but select them all, and now you'll find that I've got all of these loaded into my memory effectively. So I'm going to click on each one of these boxes very carefully. Finally that one. So these objects then are sitting one on top of another, and I'm simply going to select them all, and now I'm going to go up to my menu, my alignment menu up at the top here. Although if you prefer it, we can actually just make sure that under our objects and layout, we can use the alignment tool as a panel. So let's actually bring this onto the screen. That's probably easier. And then we want to align it horizontally, and we want to then align it vertically. So those are all sitting one on top of the other. Okay, let's just move this away now. We don't need that anymore. And I'm going to put this onto the page. Now, having selected all of those images together, I'm now going to use my Object States menu area. Let's just bring that onto a little bit closer onto the screen. And I'm going to, having selected it, I'm going to make this into a new multi-state object. So here we are. We've got 4 states to this object. And what I'm going to do now then is, again with my buttons and forms, I'm going to turn each one of these in turn into a button. So here's my multi-state object. This is my first state. So now that I've got that selected, I'm going to make that into a button. And that button is going to have an action on it, and that action is to go to the next state in this multi-state object. Once again, move to the next state, select that, make that into a button, make that have an action which is to go to the next state. Once again, go to state number 3, select this and make that into a button which goes to an action which is to go to the next state. And finally, the very last one, we do the same thing, which would mean, let's just make sure I've selected that, go to that and make that into a button, and that is also going to be an action on that is going to go to the next state. That will make it simply rotate around the whole sequence. Let's just check to see if that works, again through our preview panel. Okay, so obviously we haven't completed our work here because we really need to have some indication that there is some action on this multi-state object, because otherwise people won't know what that is. So we either can label it as such or even put a pop-up text as we move over it. So I'm not going to work on that now because I just want to finally do one last thing, which is to add some video into this ebook. So let's actually just save that. Now we're going to go to Moussaka. And for Moussaka, I want to actually focus on this page down here. And I'm going to place a video in here. So once again, same idea, we just need to locate our video. And I'm going to use this small video here of making a Moussaka. Now, as you can see, this is a very large video, large in format, so just like an image, I need to reduce it down in proportion by choosing a Shift and Command button at the same time. And we're going to put it into this place here so that it fits and lines up with the text. And as you can see here, we've actually got in our media, you'll see that we've actually got this in our media panel. Let's bring this a little bit nearer to you. Okay, so by default, the first image that we see in the video when it's static is to show the first frame. But you can actually choose a different frame, and we do this by moving through the video. So let's say we want to go for something a little bit further on, maybe this one here. So if we want to take this, then we just refresh that to make that into the poster frame, like that. Now, what kind of controller do we want? Well, we're going to use the skin overall. That means that it's the standard controller that people will get when they use the video. and we also want to show the controller when people roll over it, when it's on a computer rather than on a device. Let's just have a look at this as in the preview. And again, you can see the basics of the controller, although this is not how it necessarily will look on a device. Okay, it may be that you want to edit the video, but that's basically how that works. So let's just now save that, and we'll now just do a version of this as exporting it to the EPUB, making it into our fixed layout version again, placing it. Let's just make sure that we've got the right cover. Yes, that's fine. Converting it to landscape page as before. This is obviously going to be a little bit bigger, because it's got some multimedia content in it. And after a few moments we should then see that we have our Greek island recipes, which will now load up. And as you can see, this fades up and we can move to the next page and our image appears from the bottom. Let's move on to this page here where we can play the sound. This sound, of course, will stop when we move to the next page, and I'm now going to just show you the sequence of images. We just want to now look at Moussaka, and here's our video. Which of course we can enlarge up to full screen if we really want to. Okay, so that's the second version of the fixed layout with some multimedia and animation.